Hey everybody, it's ASMR Angel Reads. For some reason my camera seems a bit fuzzy. I've looked at all the settings and I don't know what to do about it. I don't know if my other videos have been this way and I just haven't noticed till now, but anyway, we're continuing with chapter 2 in Daggerspell. The last we left off, Gowron was exiled by his father and renamed Nevin, which means no one or nothing. So he couldn't marry Bragawin. He left her behind. And Bragawin and her brother Garrett have been having an incestuous relationship. And Bragawin wants to do a murder-suicide at the end of the summer because they're just doing this for the summer. With summer at its height, the sun lay hot along the dusty road, its light as gold as grain ripening in the fields. Nevin, who had once been Prince Gowron, led a pack mule laden with baled herbs across the border of the Falcon Lands. As he walked, he kept constant lookout for Garrett, who might well be riding his roads. Nevin doubted if anyone else would recognize the prince in this dusty peddler, with his shabby clothes, shaggy hair, and odd mule. He was learning that a man could be invisible without mighty Dwemer workings, merely by acting in unexpected ways in unexpected places. No one would expect the prince to dare come near Falcon again. Oh, the light on seems to help. We'll see. When he came to the village, Nevin even risked buying a tankard of ale from the tavern man who barely glanced his way after he'd taken his copper. Nevin sat in the corner near an old woman and asked her foolish questions about the countryside, as if he'd traveled from far away. When he left, no one even noticed him go. It was toward evening when he reached the destination, a wooden hut on the edge of the wild forest. Out in front, 2 goats were grazing on the stubby grass, while Yenna sat on her stoop and watched them. An old woman, thin as a stick, with long twig-like fingers gnarled from her long years of hard work. Her white hair was carelessly caught up in a dirty scarf. An herb woman and midwife, she was thought by some folks to be a witch, but in truth she merely loved her solitude. "Good morrow, lad," Yenna said. "Looks like an old rigger sent me a pretty thing or two." "He has. This supply should last you through the winter." Nevin unloaded the mule and carried the herbs inside, then watered the animals and set them out to graze with the goats. He came back to the hut to find Yana laying bread and cheese on her small, unsteady table. When she handed him a wooden cup of water and told him to set to, Nevin dug in, spreading the soft, pungent goat cheese on the dark bread. Yenna nibbled a bit of bread and studied him so curiously that Nevin wondered if she knew he'd once been the prince. "It's wearisome having old Rhaegar gone from this part of the forest," Yenna said, "and so sudden it was. Him coming by one day to tell me he was going. Has he ever told you why?" "Well, good dame, I do what my master says and hold my tongue. Always best with strange ones like Rhaegar. Well, if he sends you to me with herbs every now and then, I'll manage." Yenna cut a few more slices from the loaf and laid them on Nevin's plate. "I miss Rhaegar, though. I could always count on his counsel, like when there was some troubling thing." Nevin felt the Dwemer warning down his back. "And how fares Lord Garrett these days?" "You're almost as sharp as your master, aren't you, lad? Well, here, tell Rhaegar this tale for me. He always kept an eye like on poor little Bragawin. Did he now? I never knew that. Oh, truly he did, just from his fatherly distance like. So tell him about this. About a month ago it was, the page up at the Dun got a bit of a fever, and a stubborn thing it was. I must have been back there 5 times before the lad was right again, and Lord Garrett gave me a joint of venison for it. He says, do you have a herb to take madness away, Yenna? He was jesting, I suppose, but he smiled so cold like it troubled my heart. And then the last time I went up the hill, I see Garrett sobbing on his father's grave. You can rest assured I'll tell Rhaegar about it. How does Bragawin fare? Shut up with the man like that. Now there's the strangest thing of all. You'd think she'd be heartsick, but she goes around like a woman in a dream. I've never seen a lass look so broody like. I'd say she was with child, but whose would it be? She's just as broody as if her belly was swelling, but that betrothed of hers has been gone too long now. Well, tell Rhaegar for me. On the ride home, Nevin pushed the bulky mule as fast as it would go, but it still took him over 2 days to reach his new home, up in the wild forest north of the Boars d'Immense. Nevin and Rhaegar cleared a good space of land near the creek. They'd used the logs to build roundhouse and land to plant beans, turnips, and such like. Because Rhaegar's reputation as a healer moved north with him, they had plenty of food and even a few coins, since farmers and bondsmen alike are willing to pay with chickens and cheese for Rhaegar's herbs. Now when it was too late, Nevin clearly saw that he and Bragawin would have had a comfortable if sparse life in the forest. If only you hadn't been such a dolt, Nevin cursed himself. Such a stupid fool. Rhaegar was out in the front of the house treating the running eye of a little boy while his mother squatted nearby. From her ragged brown tunic, Nevin saw that she was a bondswoman, her thin face utterly blank, as if she hardly cared whether the lad was cured or not, even though she'd brought him all this way. On her face was a brand, the old scar pale on dirty skin. Although he was barely 3, the lad was already branded too, marked out as Lord Blaine's property for the rest of his life. Rhaegar stood the lad on a tree stump and wiped the infected eye with a bit of rag dipped in herbal salve. Nevin went to stable the mule alongside the bay gelding. When he came back, the bondswoman looked at him with feigned disinterest. Even from 10 feet away, he could smell her unwashed flesh and rags. Rhaegar called her over and gave her a pot of salve and told her how to apply it. She listened, her face showing a brief flicker of hope. I can't pay you much, my lord, she said. I bought some of the first apples. You and the lad eat those on your way home. My thanks, she stared at the ground. I heard you tended poor folk, but I didn't believe it at first. It's true, spread the tale around. I was so frightened, she went on, staring at the ground. If the lad went blind, they'd kill him because he couldn't work. What? Nevin broke in. Lord Blaine would never do such a thing. Lord Blaine? She looked up with a faint smile. Well, so he wouldn't. How would he even know we're alive to be killed? His overseer, my lord, that's who would do it. Nevin supposed that she spoke the cold truth. As the prince, he'd given less thought to bondsmen than horses. Rhaegar was making him see the different world. Once the woman went on her way, Rhaegar and Nevin went inside the cabin, a single light, airy room scented with new cut pine. They had scattered off casts of furniture from the grateful farmers, a table, a bench, a freestanding cabinet to hold cookware. On one wall was the half-finished hearth Nevin was building as his share of the summer's work. Nevin dipped them ale from a barrel and brought the dented tankards over to join Rhaegar at the table. "And how was your journey?" Rhaegar said. "How fares old Lyanna?" "Well enough, my lord, but she told me a strange tale about the falcon. Ah, ye gods, my poor Bragawin, I truly wish you'd done what my father would have, beaten me half to death for my fault." "That would have solved nothing and made you feel like you'd made amends when you hadn't." Rhaegar hesitated on the edge of anger. "Ah, well, what's past is past. Tell me the tale, lad." While Nevin told him, Rhaegar listened quietly, but his hands clapped his tankard tighter and tighter. At the end, Rhaegar swore under his breath. "Truly, we best look into this. Here, old Lyanna can practically smell when a lass is with child. There's no chance the baby's yours, is it?" "Not unless longing for a woman can get her with child." His eyes still dark, Rhaegar smiled. "And what do you think about your Gwenny if she's big with another man's child?" "If he's a good man, let her go with him. If he's not, then I'll take her, child and all." "Well and good. First we'll have to see if that child's Blaine's. If it is, there'll be a wedding, and that'll be the end of it. If not, I still have hope we can get her away." "Here, my lord, why are you so concerned with Bragawin? Is it just the honor of the thing?" Now that I can't tell you just yet." Nevin waited, hoping for at least a word more, but Rhaegar merely looked away, thinking. "I'll ride down to the boar early tomorrow," Rhaegar said at length. "Out of courtesy, I should let Lady Rada know there's a herbman nearby. You stay here. Blaine would hate to kill you if he saw you, but his honor would make him do what the king ordered. I should reach the Dun by noon, so you might make yourself a fire and see if you can follow me the way." On the morrow, Nevin spent an impatient morning digging stones out of their little field for the hearth. So far, most of his training was just a sort of menial labor in the summer heat. Often it galled him what was a prince doing, sweating like a flea-bitten bondsman, yet in his heart he knew that humbling the prince's pride was the real work. "There is only one key to unlock the secrets of the Dwemer. I want to know in order to help the world. Anyone wanting power for its own sake gets only dribs and drabs, hard won, harder to keep, and not worth having." Yet here and there Rhaegar had given Nevin work beating more direct on the Dwemer lore. Although Nevin had always had the second sight, it came and went of its own will, showing him what it chose to show him and not just more. Now he was learning to bring the sight under his will. There's an airplane. I'll pause. We live near the Navy base and planes fly over all day. Nevin made a circle of stones outside the ground and built a small fire, which he lit like any other man with a tinder box and flint. He let the fire burn down until the logs were glowing caves of coals. Then he stretched out on the ground, pillowed his chin into his hands, and stared directly into the fire caves. He slowed his breathing to the right rhythm and thought of Rhaegar. At last, the fire cave stretched, widened, and turned into a sheen of sunlight glowing on a polished wood chamber. In the flames, he made out Rhaegar, a tiny image. Nevin summoned his will and thought of Rhaegar, imagining him clearly, and forced his mind to him. The vision swelled, turned solid, swelled again, and became as clear as though Nevin was looking into the woman's hall from outside the window. With one last effort of will, Nevin went in, hearing a little rushy hiss, a dropping sensation in his stomach, and at last he was standing beside Rhaegar on the floor. Lady Rada was sitting in her chair with Yasala perching on the footstool nearby. With his shirt off to reveal a bad case of boils, a page was kneeling in front of Rhaegar on the floor. There will have to be These will have to be Lance, Rhaegar said. Since I don't have my tools with me, I'll have to ride back tomorrow and with your lady's leave. The boy gave a miserable squeak in anticipation. Now don't be silly, lad, Rada said. They've been hurting you for weeks, and if the Erdman lances them, they'll be over and done with. Don't you go hiding in the forest all day tomorrow. That lad grabbed his shirt from the floor and made Rada a bow, then fled unceremoniously. Smiling, Rada shook her head at him, then motioned Rhaegar to a chair next to hers. Sit down and rest, good sir, Rada said. So you say you're from the south. Have you any interesting news? My thanks, Rhaegar bowed and took the chair. Well, no true news, but a fair bit of evil rumor. Indeed, Rada said unsteadily. How fares Lord Garrett on the Falcon? I see the rumors have reached my lady's ears badly, alas, and of course the locals insist on talking of witchcraft. Yasala leaned forward, clasping her arms around her knees, her eyes half filled with tears, when she remembered the happy night of her betrothal. Nevin felt such a stab of pity for her, the vision broke. It took him a long time to retrieve it. Mourning is understandable, Rhaegar said, but after all, the natural order of things is for the son to lose his father sooner or later. He glanced at Yasala. Once he has you on his side, no doubt the black mood will lift. If he ever marries me, Yasala burst out. Hold your tongue, lamb, Rada said. How can I, Yasala snapped, after what Blaine said? Rada raised her hand as if to slap her. Yasala fell silent. Kindly forgive my daughter, good sir, Rada said. She's worried with heart, thinking that what happened to poor Bragwin might happen to her. A sad, sad thing that was, Rhaegar sighed. Let's hope she finds a better man soon. The villagers tell me that your son hopes to announce his betrothal to the lady. Well, Rada's voice went flat. I'll pray that such happens. So, Nevin thought, the babe's not Blaine's. True enough, Rhaegar answered. I'd hoped so much it was. Nevin was so shocked that he lost his vision again, and for good this time. Rhaegar returned at sunset. He tended the mule, then came in the hut where Nevin was streaming with curiosity, was lying out their evening meal. Rhaegar took a silver coin out of his brigha pocket and tossed it on the table. Our Lady Rada is generous, Rhaegar remarked. Little does she know whom this will feed, but she'd be glad. We call a bit more after you left us, and she still honors you, Prince Galeron. The prince is dead. Rhaegar smiled and sat down, picking up a slice of bread and butter. I think I'll risk getting Nevin's throat cut tomorrow. Lord Blaine will be at the hut when I ride back to tend that lad's boil, so you will come with me. Well and good, my lord. Here, why did you wish that child was Blaine's? Think, lad, if Blaine's not to blame, well then who is? What man in the Falcon done? A couple of 12-year-old lads? A grubby stableman? The odd chamberlain? So agreed that he can barely lift his hand to a maid, much less anything else. So who does that leave? Well, nobody. Nobody? Oh, by the hells, Nevin could barely say it. Garrett? By the hells indeed, that is a terrible dark thing to excuse any man of doing, and I won't make a move until I'm sure. Nevin picked up a table dagger, twisting it in his fingers for the solid comfort of the metal. If it's true, Nevin said, I'll kill him. Look at you, your father's son indeed. Nevin stabbed the dagger hard into the tabletop and let it quiver. And would killing him be such a wrong thing? It would for you. Rhaegar took a calm bite of bread and butter. I forbid you to even think about it. Done, then his blood is safe from me. Rhaegar considered him carefully. Nevin picked up a slice of bread, then flung it back onto the plate. You said you'd take her, child and all, Rhaegar said. Is that still true if she's carrying her own brother's bastard? I'm the man who left her. Of course it is. You're a decent enough lad at heart. Truly, you might redeem yourself yet. On the morrow, by keeping his hood muffled around his face, Nevin managed to avoid being recognized by any of the servants in the boar's dun. When he and Rhaegar went up to the women's hall, Nevin kept his cloak on and busied himself with unpacking Rhaegar's herbs and implements. Yasala was mercifully gone, and Rada was occupied with Rhaegar and one of the pages. What do you mean you don't know where Marcy is? Rada said to the page. I told him to be here when the herbman came. He's scared, my lady, but I can go look for him. It's going to take a long time. Then run and start right now. As soon as the page was gone, Nevin took hold of his cloak and tossed it onto the floor. Rada stared, her eyes filling with tears. Gelron, oh, thank the holy gods. It gladdens my heart to see you well. My humble thanks, my lady, but my name is no one. I know all about your father's spite. You've got to be gone when my son rides home. I had to come. I'll beg you for news of Bragawin. Rada's face went slack as she looked away. Our poor little Gwenny, I wish the gods had allowed her to marry you. I swear maybe she should have ridden into exile with you. She glanced Rhaegar's way. Here, good sir, I can trust you for bringing my prince if nothing else. So I'll speak freely. Blaine rode down to the Falcon not long ago, and he came home in a rage. He's sure Gwenny will never have him, he said. She walks around like she's half dead and barely speaks. I tried to get her to come here, but she refused. She's still mourning you in her heart, my prince, or so I hope. So we all hope, Rhaegar said dryly. How often has Garrett ridden here to see his betrothed? Startled as a concerned deer, Rada glanced this way and that. It's all nonsense, she burst out. I won't believe that they'll do such a thing. Not Gwenny, not Garrow. Blaine and Yasala are just working themselves up with silly suspicions because they're so disappointed and eager I won't believe it. What? Rhaegar said. Tell me, my lady. Get these dark fears out of your heart. Rada hesitated, fighting with herself, then gave in. All of the servants at the Falcon Dun say that only Bragawin stands between them and Lord Garrett's rage, just as if she was his wife. And Yasala's my own child has been working her brother up a little suspicious. Garrow was always so fond of Gwenny, she said. It's not fair. Gwenny even has the man I want. If Gwenny's this and Gwenny's that, and all because of Yasala always envied little Bragawin, wretched beauty. Wretched indeed. You say you can't believe it. Is that true, or do you only want to turn away from an unclean thing? Ye gods, I couldn't blame you. Rada broke and wept, covering her face with her hands. He's always loved her too much. Why do you think I worked so hard on Lord Dwyn to let Gwenny marry so young? She had to get out of that cursed household. Cursed indeed, twice cursed. Nevin paced restlessly back and forth while Rhaegar helped the lady into her chair. Tell me somewhat, my lady, Nevin said. If I steal her away from her brother, will you blame me? Never, but if you do, Garrett will call on his friends and they'll hunt you down like a gray deer. I'd die for her, and I'm more clever than any gray deer. That very evening, Nevin took his bay gelding and headed south to the Falcon Dun. He was going to have to be clever. He could never risk riding straight into the fort, even if Garrett were gone. He would be of no use to Bragwin if Garrett returned and killed him at her feet. Though Gowron had never been particularly good with the sword, Nevin had a few tricks of Dwemer at his disposal. He was sure that if he could only get a few minutes alone with Bragwin, he could easily convince her to steal out of the dun and escape with him. Once they were on the road, Garrett would never find them. When Nevin reached Yenna's hut, he told her that Rhaegar had sent him to keep an eye on things. As he'd hoped, Yenna was so glad of it that she offered him shelter with her. Okay, that's almost a half an hour. Thanks for listening. Bye.